Da habe ich ungefähr 4 Wochen gekämpft. Die waren inzwischen mit anderen nach Auschwitz transportiert.
It was a struggle to get the women out of Auschwitz.
Es würde zu weit führen, wenn man die Details diesen Kampf.
Sometimes in the middle of 1944, war was turning bad against the Germans. The Russians were advancing westward, and Schindler was ordered to deliver 700 of the people that he had, of the 1,000 people.
In the darkest days of World War II, when hope seemed lost and millions faced unimaginable horrors, one man made an extraordinary choice. A German businessman, not a soldier or a politician, but a man who saw suffering and decided to act. His name was Oskar Schindler. At first, he was just another opportunist, seeking profit amid the chaos of war. But what started as a pursuit of wealth soon turned into a mission to save lives. Against all odds, Schindler used his charm, connections, and cunning to rescue over 1,200 Jewish men, women, and children from the grasp of the Nazi war machine. But how did he do it? How did a man once aligned with the Nazi Party transform into an unlikely hero? Stay with us as we uncover the remarkable story of Oskar Schindler, his daring acts, his sacrifices, and the legacy that continues to inspire the world today. In a small town nestled in the heart of Europe, long before his name would be etched into history, Oskar Schindler was just another man chasing success. He wasn't a hero, not yet. He was a man who loved fast motorcycles, fine suits, and the thrill of a good business deal. If you had asked him then what his legacy would be, he might have said wealth, power, and influence. But fate had a different plan, one that even he couldn't have foreseen. Born on April 28, 1908, in Zwickau, then part of Austria-Hungary, Schindler grew up in a world that seemed full of endless possibilities. His father ran a thriving machinery business, ensuring a comfortable life for the family. Oskar was charming, quick-witted, and always knew how to talk his way out of trouble. From an early age, he showed a natural gift for persuasion, whether it was convincing his teachers to overlook his mischief or charming his way into exclusive social circles. But life in Zwickau was small, and Schindler's ambitions were anything but. As he grew older, his hunger for excitement led him beyond the quiet town of his childhood. He found himself drawn to the pulse of the cities, where fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye. Business, he believed, was the ultimate game, one that he was determined to win. In the late 1930s, as the world shifted under the weight of political change, Schindler saw new opportunities emerging. He was always in the right place at the right time, striking deals and forging connections that brought him closer to the center of power. It was during this time that he arrived in Krakow, Poland, taking over an enamelware factory with a single goal: profit. But life has a way of surprising even the most calculated of men. What began as a business venture would soon become something far greater. Within the walls of his factory, amid the hum of machinery and the scent of metal, Schindler would face choices that would redefine him, not as a businessman, but as something else entirely. What made him change? What transformed a man of ambition into a man of compassion? The answers were waiting, just beyond the factory gates. By 1942, the situation in Krakow had deteriorated significantly. The Nazi regime intensified its persecution of the Jewish population, forcing them into labor camps under increasingly brutal conditions. Schindler, now deeply involved with his workers, found himself at a crossroads: continue to profit or take greater risks to save lives. Schindler's factory, once a profitable venture, became a lifeline for hundreds of Jewish workers. With the establishment of the Krakow-Płaszów labor camp under the command of the ruthless Alman Guth, the need to protect his employees became more urgent than ever. Schindler, leveraging his charm and connections, worked tirelessly to keep his workers on his payroll, shielding them from the horrors of the camp. He expanded his network of influence, bribing officials and cultivating relationships that allowed him to intervene in deportations. Schindler's ability to navigate these dangerous waters was nothing short of remarkable. He convinced Nazi officials that his factory was crucial to the war effort, fabricating production numbers and exaggerating its importance. Yet, his actions were not without consequences. As the war escalated, resources became scarcer, and maintaining the illusion of loyalty to the regime grew increasingly difficult. Schindler's wealth dwindled as he poured his personal fortune into keeping his factory running and his workers safe. The factory floor, once a place of mere labor, transformed into a sanctuary. Workers whispered prayers of gratitude, knowing that each passing day under Schindler's protection was a blessing. Emily Schindler, his wife, played a crucial role in this transformation, ensuring that workers received food, medical care, and a semblance of dignity in a world that sought to strip them of everything. Schindler's resolve was tested when a train carrying his workers to a labor camp was mistakenly redirected. He acted swiftly, using all his influence to bring them back, arguing that their skills were irreplaceable. His efforts paid off, but each victory came with greater scrutiny from the authorities. Despite the ever-present danger, Schindler continued to defy expectations. He walked a fine line, maintaining the illusion of compliance while working behind the scenes to save as many lives as possible. His story was no longer one of mere ambition, but of extraordinary courage in the face of unimaginable evil. As 1942 drew to a close, Schindler knew that the fight was far from over. His factory stood as a beacon of hope amid the darkness, but with each passing day, the stakes grew higher, and the risks became even more profound. In 1943, the atrocities in Krakow reached a terrifying peak. The Nazi regime intensified its efforts to eradicate the Jewish population, launching mass deportations and executing those deemed unfit for labor. The Krakow ghetto was liquidated, forcing thousands into the notorious Płaszów labor camp under the brutal command of Amon Guth. Schindler's factory, once a profitable business, became a haven of salvation. He expanded his efforts to keep his workers under his protection, constantly bribing officials and fabricating production reports to ensure they remained essential to the war effort. His charisma and resourcefulness were his greatest assets, allowing him to maneuver through the ever-tightening grip of the authorities. By mid-1943, Schindler's resolve hardened. Witnessing daily transports to the camps, he felt an urgent responsibility to do more. He spent sleepless nights planning ways to increase the number of workers he could shelter within his factory walls. Every addition to his workforce meant one more life saved from certain doom. Emily Schindler played a crucial role during this period, tending to the sick and injured within the factory. She coordinated medical supplies, ensured food provisions, and provided a sense of hope amid the relentless despair. The atmosphere in the factory grew tense as SS officers made frequent inspections. Schindler had to think on his feet, offering lavish dinners and expensive gifts to sway their suspicions. His charm masked his defiance, but the risks were mounting with each passing day. As the year progressed, Schindler found himself relying more on a network of trusted informants who provided early warnings of impending raids or deportation orders. This intelligence allowed him to act swiftly, often intercepting crucial documents or intervening just in time to save workers from being transported to labor camps. He also made strategic alliances with sympathetic German officials who, whether out of greed or genuine empathy, aided his efforts by turning a blind eye to his operations. These relationships proved invaluable, allowing him to expand his protective reach beyond his factory and into the broader Jewish community in Krakow. The winter of 1943 was particularly harsh. Food shortages became severe, and Schindler had to tap into his remaining personal wealth to secure provisions for his workers. He organized secret supply routes and ensured that his workers received warm clothing and medical care, often smuggling these items under the noses of suspicious guards. As tensions escalated, Schindler faced growing opposition from within the Nazi ranks. Some viewed his factory as a model of efficiency, while others suspected his true motives. Each day brought new challenges and new risks, but Schindler remained resolute in his mission. By the end of 1943, Schindler's factory was not just a place of work, but a symbol of quiet resistance. His actions had saved hundreds of lives, but he knew the fight was far from over. The most difficult challenges were still to come, and Schindler braced himself for the trials that lay ahead. The answers, as always, lay just beyond the factory gates. As 1944 dawned, the war was beginning to turn against Germany, but the suffering of the Jewish population only intensified. Schindler knew that time was running out. The Nazi regime was becoming more desperate and ruthless, and deportations to extermination camps increased rapidly. Schindler's factory was now a beacon of hope for over 1,000 workers. but he faced mounting pressure from authorities who questioned his operations. Determined to protect his workers at all costs, Schindler began to make even bolder moves. He started forging documents at a larger scale, creating false records that justified keeping his employees within the factory. His charm and strategic bribes allowed him to buy more time, but the Gestapo's suspicions grew stronger with each passing day. Food shortages and supply chain disruptions threatened the factory's ability to function. Schindler poured his personal wealth into ensuring that his workers were fed and clothed, further cementing his reputation as their protector. Emily Schindler played a vital role in this effort, organizing shipments of food and medical supplies under the cover of darkness. The atrocities of Płaszów continued to haunt Schindler. Amon Goeth's brutal reign over the camp brought unimaginable suffering, and Schindler knew that any worker transferred there faced a grim fate. He increased his efforts to intervene in transport orders, using his influence to have workers reassigned back to his factory under the guise of essential labor. By mid-1944, rumors circulated that Schindler's factory might be shut down as the war effort shifted. Facing this new challenge, Schindler devised a daring plan to relocate his factory to Brunlitz, further away from the front lines and closer to relative safety. He leveraged every connection he had to make the move possible, knowing that failure would mean certain death for his workers. Despite the enormous risks, Schindler pressed on. Each day brought new challenges, but his unwavering resolve never faltered. The fight for survival continued, and the road ahead remained uncertain. Schindler's plans to relocate his factory to Brunlitz were met with significant resistance. Bureaucratic red tape, escalating costs, and constant scrutiny from the authorities turned the move into a logistical nightmare. Every delay increased the risk of his workers being sent to concentration camps, and Schindler knew time was running out. To ensure the transition went smoothly, Schindler intensified his efforts to bribe officials, sometimes putting himself in direct danger. He hosted lavish gatherings, pretending to be the ever-loyal businessman, all while secretly finalizing the transport of his workers. Each negotiation felt like a life-or-death gamble. In the factory, tension was at an all-time high. Workers lived in constant fear, and Schindler did his best to reassure them, though he himself was plagued with doubt. Rumors circulated that rival businessmen were reporting him to the authorities, seeking to dismantle his operation and seize his assets. Amidst the chaos, Schindler received news that a train carrying a group of his workers had been mistakenly diverted to Auschwitz. Racing against time, he traveled to the infamous camp, using every ounce of his charm and influence to negotiate their release. The experience left him deeply shaken, but more determined than ever to see his mission through. As the factory finally relocated to Brunlitz, Schindler faced new challenges. The war was nearing its end, but the desperation of the Nazi regime made them more ruthless. Supplies were scarce, and Schindler was running out of resources. Yet he pressed on, driven by a singular purpose: to save as many lives as possible. In the final months of the war, uncertainty loomed over Brunlitz. The echoes of distant gunfire signaled the approaching Allied forces, but danger remained ever present. Schindler's workers, though safer than many, lived in constant fear of sudden orders that could send them to their deaths. Schindler worked tirelessly to keep the factory operational, producing defective munitions to subtly sabotage the war effort. He carefully maintained the illusion of compliance, while secretly shielding his workers from further harm. Food shortages grew dire, forcing him to barter and bribe for supplies with the remnants of his dwindling fortune. Reports of liberation spread like whispers among the workers, filling them with cautious hope. Schindler, however, knew that survival hinged on maintaining appearances until the very last moment. Every day brought new challenges, from inspections by suspicious officials to the gnawing fear that his deception might be uncovered. Despite the uncertainty, Schindler remained resolute. He continued to negotiate, cajole, and manipulate the system, ensuring his workers had a fighting chance at life beyond the war. But with every passing hour, the question remained: would they all make it to see freedom? As April 1945 dawned, hope and fear coexisted in fragile balance within the walls of Schindler's factory. The distant thunder of artillery grew louder, signaling the advance of the Allied forces. Yet with the collapse of the regime imminent, the threat of last-minute retribution hung over Brunlitz like a dark cloud. Schindler knew that as the front lines moved closer, Retreating forces might seek to eliminate any remaining witnesses to their crimes. He doubled his efforts to safeguard his workers, instructing them to remain inside the factory at all costs. His once charming persona hardened into quiet determination, knowing that a single misstep could lead to disaster. Despite the chaos outside, Schindler maintained a sense of order within the factory. He reassured his workers, reminding them that liberation was near. Small acts of defiance, such as slowing production and ensuring food rations were shared equally, kept morale high and reinforced the sense of unity among the workers. One of the most tense moments came when a group of armed officers arrived at the factory, demanding an inspection. Schindler, his heart pounding, welcomed them with his characteristic charm, offering them food and alcohol to distract from the lack of actual production. As they left, unaware of the true nature of his operations, a collective sigh of relief filled the factory. With every passing day, Schindler's health deteriorated under the immense pressure, yet he refused to abandon his post. His wife, Emily, stood steadfast by his side, offering quiet support and ensuring the workers' well-being. Finally, in early May, the long-awaited moment arrived. News reached Schindler that German forces were in full retreat and that Soviet troops were closing in on Brunlitz. Schindler gathered his workers and informed them that their ordeal was nearly over. Cheers erupted, but the celebrations were cautious. Until the final enemy soldier was gone, danger still lurked. Knowing he could now be arrested as a former member of the regime, Schindler prepared to flee. His workers, grateful for his sacrifices, gifted him a ring inscribed with the words, "Whoever saves one life, saves the world entire." Tears filled his eyes as he realized the impact of his actions. Under the cover of night, Schindler and Emily fled Brunlitz, leaving behind the factory that had become a symbol of hope. The workers watched them go, forever indebted to the man who had risked everything to save them. The war was over, but for Schindler, a new struggle was about to begin. After fleeing Brunlitz, Schindler and Emily found themselves penniless and on the run. With the war at an end, former Nazi collaborators were being hunted down, and despite his heroic efforts, Schindler was not immune to suspicion. He moved from town to town, seeking refuge among those who knew the truth of his actions. In the years that followed, Schindler struggled to find stability. His business ventures failed, and the wealth he once enjoyed was gone. Despite his sacrifices, he found it difficult to adjust to a world that had moved on without him. He relied heavily on the support of the Jewish community, who never forgot what he had done for them. Schindler's name began to fade into obscurity until the 1960s, when the people he saved made efforts to ensure his legacy was recognized. In 1963, he was honored by Yad Vashem as one of the righteous among the nations. He visited Israel several times, welcomed as a hero. Yet he remained a humble man, often saying he wished he had done more. Despite the recognition, Schindler lived out his final years in relative poverty in Germany. He struggled with his health and feelings of inadequacy, haunted by the memories of those he could not save. Friends and former workers supported him emotionally and financially, ensuring that he never felt completely abandoned. Schindler's story gained global attention after the publication of Thomas Keneally's book, Schindler's Ark, in 1982, which was later adapted into Steven Spielberg's acclaimed film, Schindler's List, in 1993. The film immortalized his legacy and introduced his extraordinary acts to a new generation, ensuring that his courage would never be forgotten. In 1974, he passed away at the age of 66. In accordance with his wishes, he was buried in Jerusalem on Mount Zion, the only former member of the Nazi Party to be honored in this way. His tombstone reads, "The unforgettable rescuer of 1,200 persecuted Jews." Today, Oskar Schindler's legacy lives on through the thousands of descendants of those he saved. His story is a powerful reminder of the impact one individual can have in the face of overwhelming darkness. Schools, museums, and institutions around the world continue to honor his memory, using his story to educate future generations about the power of compassion and moral courage. Though he considered himself an ordinary man, Schindler's actions prove that even in the darkest of times, a single person can make a difference. His bravery and compassion continue to inspire generations, ensuring that the world never forgets the extraordinary choice he made in the darkest of times.